Hello. Welcome to a special Halloween edition of Pissdrinker with Stefan Anderson, or should I say, Edward Snowden, tonight. That's my costume. That's why I look all weird. And I'm drinking the exciting, freshly sent to New England first time, born yesterday, fresh hop or wet hop pale ale from Lagunitas. It's 5 days old, and it's one of those beers where they ship the undried hops from the farms to the brewery in 1 day, and they only use the wet hops in this one, I believe, and they also tell you specifically which hops they use, which are Mosaic, Amarillo, Equinox, and I guess they don't say all of them, but there's some others. And it's interesting that they're including Mosaic and Equinox, which are very new, hip hop varieties, which I feel like you haven't seen used in many fresh hop pale ales, because they usually use Cascade or Centennial or something like that. That seems like it's mostly been more readily available in fresh hop form. And I'm kind of cheated. I tried some of these yesterday. We'll see if it's gotten worse in 1 day longer. So when I open the bottle, the aroma comes out pretty strong already. So this is what it looks like here. Similar color to a lot of the pale ales I love, but as you can see, it's not very hazy, but does have a very soapy, dense, creamy head on top of it there. And there's actually, I'm just going to pour a little bit more in there. There are just a few little particulates in the bottom of the bottle here that add a very subtle haze, but I can see my finger pretty clearly through there. So it's kind of the West Coast style of filtering and bright tank aging. But the aroma does not taste like it has been aged too long at all. It smells a lot actually like Belgian yeast, that first whiff. It's like bubblegum, cotton candy, like cotton candy bubble yum. It was one of my favorite flavors when I was younger. Except that candy was actually extremely sweet. It smells sweet, but it's pretty dry from what I remember yesterday. We'll see. But it's very fruity at first. Maybe some coconut, pineapple sort of thing going on, ambrosia salad. A little bit of resinous, like juicy grapefruit. But it just really smells like candy, kind of like sweet tarts a little bit, some Smarties. And passion fruit too is all in there. I'm surprised there might be a little bit of Citra in this, but it smells, actually reminds me of another beer I recently had, and which I plan on doing a review side by side with, is the double dry hop 4-point from Trillium, which is very New England style pale ale, but extremely hopped up for a pale ale, and that's exactly what this is. This is 6.5% alcohol and about 70 IBUs, I believe, which is about the same for the 4-point. But I assume this is only dry hopped a single time, because how many of those fresh hops can they actually get? And the head is sticking around, and it's just looking more beautiful and meringue-like. And the aroma is still just like all of those fruity, hard candies you can imagine. And not very much malt. I don't think there's really any toastiness. If you look at it, it's pretty pale. It isn't maybe as pale as the Trillium 4-point, But it's hard to compare because it's not nearly as hazy. Alright, so I think it's time for a sip. Yeah. It's not a big IPA that's just going to bust your mouth with loads of malt and bitterness. It seems like it's really kept all those floral, perfumey, special oils intact that we usually lose from hops, and it has this there's something that's a little more mellow about it than if you just took a bunch of dried and intensely reduced hops in a way and you just get all that resin and boil it in there. That's not how it is. It seems like they definitely use a lot of late hopping, and they use the hops very well, because there's a lot of ways I think you could brew with fresh hops and just kind of ruin it. And if you just boiled a lot of the fresh hops in there and didn't do all late hopping, you wouldn't get the special oils and volatile oils that escape from the hops so quickly. Well, there's just a lot of different smells going on. Now that I've had a little sip and I got some of that bitterness, it doesn't seem quite as candy-like anymore. And I'm getting just a touch of green onion. I remember garlic coming out a little bit more as it warmed. Yeah, if I take a big sniff, it's got a little bit of that dank, hot onion sort of thing going on. And there's a little sweetness to it. Not quite toasty, kind of almost, it reminds me of like Cheerios, which are sort of, they're grainy and right on the edge of being toasty and not sweet. This has a touch of sweetness. It definitely does, but the body's still very light. Carbonation is about medium, maybe a little high. But I really like how they didn't overdo the carbonation or the bitterness of the alcohol with this one. I think it's probably one of the perfect mediums for displaying just the hop glory, but also not making it so low in alcohol and such that they have to keep the bitterness and the hopping rate lower, else it will be, I don't know, maybe too vegetal. There's none of that vegetal sort of stemmy sort of thing happening here. After a few sips, it does get quite bitter, though. But it's easy to keep going back to. The flavor sort of maybe reminds me of that double dose from Otter Creek, but with a little bit more of the candy-ish and garlicky sort of aromas. Yeah, it's like that garlic isn't a normal fresh garlic. It's almost like a mixture of fresh garlic with roasted garlic and some sort of roasted pepper, where it's intensified, but it's also sweetened a little bit. I don't know. I don't think I'm really getting much blueberry. Maybe a touch of some sort of berry, like deep earthy berry skin from the Equinox. It's not super peachy or pineapple-y like some Mosaic Pales. It seems like the blend just kind of brings out lots and lots of different flavors. Like the Equinox, I've always thought brought a lot of bell pepper sort of quality to it, which is definitely in this one. Maybe some nectarine, maybe like not super juicy peach, maybe some apricot, something like that. a little orange, but it's not intensely bitter orange peel. Nor am I getting much pine. Just the resinous bitterness quality recalls pine sap, but it's not too earthy or like woody. So like when you say woody, it's like, maybe there is a little bit of wood. There's just so many different flavors going on from these hops. Just anything that comes from the ground and is fresh in a way. Yeah, at 5 years old, it's still completely outstanding. And definitely up there with the hazier, juicier New England IPAs. I was worried that something like this, where they don't leave a lot of the sediment in there, would kind of ruin the fresh hop quality. But when it's this fresh, it's still very good. I wonder what happens to these bottles after a week and a half or 2 weeks. It would be interesting to compare that with something like a heady topper after 2 weeks. Like which one would last longer. Yeah, I'm probably gonna give this one like an 8.5 out of 10. It's very well done, but I would like to see, it'd be great if Trillium could somehow get their hands on a large amount of wet hops and make something like this. But for now, the West Coast breweries, I think, are usually the most lucky and available to get their hands on lots of really good, cutting edge Northwest hops. And it's also amazing just how it seems like there's some kind of fruity Belgian yeast just from that intense candy-ish tang. So right now, go out there and get a Lagunitas born yesterday. I'm really glad it came to the East Coast this year. Happy Halloween.